Have you ever felt like you're just not seeing the full story? Well, today we're going to dive into a pretty compelling argument from a social media author that's been making the rounds. It claims to connect a lot of recent global events to a much bigger, hidden agenda. So we're going to break it down step by step and see exactly how all the pieces fit together from this one particular viewpoint.
So right out of the gate, the author hits us with a pretty bold claim. He's saying that while a lot of people are only now starting to question things like the pandemic, we're already late to the party. The core idea here is that we've been looking in the rearview mirror, but the real story has already moved on to a whole new phase.
And that, of course, brings us to the central question of this whole explainer. If that chapter's over, what's next? What does the next chapter actually look like? Well, the author thinks he has the answer, and it's a multi-part agenda that we're about to unpack right now.
Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the agenda itself, the author first lays out a really simple framework. It's the how he believes massive, society-wide changes are actually pushed through.
Here's how he breaks it down. It's a three-step process. First, you need a crisis, either a real one or a manufactured one. Second, the emergency solutions to that crisis start to become, well, normal. And the third step? Those temporary measures are quietly made permanent. The argument is that with COVID-19, we saw steps 1 and 2 play out in the open, but step 3 is happening right now, mostly behind the scenes.
So, the big question is, how is this permanence supposedly being locked in? The author points to what he calls 3 main tools of control. Think of them as 3 separate agendas that are designed to interlock and create a completely new system.
The first pillar, the very foundation of this whole theory, is the push for a universal digital ID.
And this is where it gets really interesting. We're not talking about just a digital version of your driver's license. The author is talking about a single, unified ID that ties together every single aspect of your life. Your money, your health records, your taxes, your ability to travel. Now, it's sold to us as efficiency and security, right? But the author asks a pretty chilling question. What happens if your access to that one single ID gets blocked?
So why is this one point so absolutely critical to the whole argument? Why does having a single point of failure for your entire life in society matter so much?
And here's the answer, according to the author. This is where the entire power dynamic flips. Suddenly, you're not dealing with a person, you're not dealing with a bureaucracy you can appeal to, you're dealing with an automated system. An algorithm could decide whether you get to participate in society. Okay, let's move on to the second agenda, because you'll see how these pieces start to build on each other. After you establish that universal digital ID, the author says the next logical step is to integrate all the data.
Right now, our data is all over the place. It's in different silos. The author suggests the plan is to unify all of it. And the stated goals sound great, you know? Faster profiling for services, more efficient decisions, even early risk control. The end game here, as he sees it, is to create a single, complete digital profile for every single person.
Which, of course, brings us to that timeless, critical question of governance. In a world where a system has that much power, that much information, who's watching the watchers? Who holds them accountable?
And this brings us to the third and final tool in this theoretical toolbox, the big push toward a completely digital, cashless society.
The specific tool for this is something called a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC. Now, it's important to understand this is not the same as using your debit card or Venmo. Those are run through commercial banks. A CBDC is different. It's digital money issued directly from the central bank. And the author argues this means it can be centrally controlled and even programmed right down to the last digital penny.
So, this naturally leads to the next question. What's the catch? What are the potential dangers of a system where physical cash is gone and all money is just programmable data in a central system?
And this slide really lays out the author's biggest fears. He argues that with a CBDC, a central authority could, with the flip of a switch, block your balance. They could program your money to expire, forcing you to spend it. Your financial privacy could be completely gone with real-time monitoring of every transaction. And maybe the scariest part, your savings could potentially be erased if you don't comply with certain rules.
Okay, so we've looked at the 3 separate pieces: the digital ID, the integrated data, and the digital money. But the author's main point is that these aren't separate things. The real power, he claims, comes from how they are combined in the endgame.
And here it is. This is the author's formula for a new kind of social management. Your digital ID, plus all your integrated data, plus a purely digital currency,
That equals what he calls system-based management. So for example, imagine a world where if you exceed your monthly carbon limit, it's not a cop that gives you a ticket. Your electric car just won't start. The system enforces the rules automatically. So what is the ultimate purpose of building a system this powerful and this interconnected? The author points to a very well-known global initiative as the final piece of this whole puzzle.
He identifies Agenda 2030, a project you've probably heard of that's associated with the World Economic Forum, as the master plan. And he draws a really sharp contrast here. On the one hand, you have the beautiful narrative, these amazing goals like ending hunger, creating clean energy, world peace. I mean, who wouldn't want that? But he says there's a hidden condition. All of it must be achieved by going through this one centralized system of control.
And that brings us to the author's powerful, stark conclusion. He basically says that a system with total central control, with no real transparency, and no genuine choice for the average person, that isn't progress. In his words, it's a trap.
So he doesn't end with the definitive answer. Instead, he turns it around and leaves his audience with a challenge. He's saying this isn't some far-off sci-fi future, it's happening now. So for him, the question isn't, is this real or not? The question is, are you ready for it? And that's the final thought we'll leave you with today.